According to Elliotte Friedman, the Toronto Maple Leafs have been lowballing other teams on their goalies, including, reportedly, the Montreal Canadiens. We'll be diving into that, plus a brutal Josh Anderson injury update that indicates he could be out long-term. All that on this episode of Habs Digest. But before we get into the video, quick reminder, I know you guys don't like it. I don't like doing it either. But 54% of you guys watching this video, that's thousands of you, are not subscribed. And we are less than 100 away from 10,000. So if you want to be part of the first 10,000, you like the content we have here at Habs Digest, hit the button. We'd really appreciate it. We're going to dive first into this Josh Anderson stuff. And look, by the time this video is out, by the time you're watching this, maybe the official news on his injury is out there. Maybe he's had his MRI. But as of the recording of this video, he got injured and it doesn't look so good. In a collision last night, he kind of bent his knee in a bit of a weird way and he went off the ice. And he really couldn't put any weight on it. And one doctor out there said that it could be pretty bad. Dr. Juraj said hockey gear obscures the fine detail, of course, but concerns for him, just from watching the video, are a torn ACL, which would be 6+ months, MCL, depends on the grade, and or meniscus, 4 to 6 weeks if trimmed, 4+ months if repaired, along with a bone bruise for Josh Anderson, likely an update tomorrow after MRI. So, again, it's almost certain that we'll get an update on Josh Anderson at some point today, and if it's out by now, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll have a comment pinned, not sure. But regardless, this didn't look good, and he couldn't put any weight on it, and I've seen a lot of injuries in my life, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, whether it's hockey, in person, on TV. It didn't look good. When you go off the ice and you can't put any weight on it, and you kind of just, you're like, you can kind of see the look in his face in that clip when he goes down, and he's like, uh-oh. Like that just look on his face of not screaming in pain, just like, oh no. Again, I'm inferring a lot from almost nothing here, but at the same time, it's a little worrisome. I mean, Josh Anderson has been in the midst of playing really, really well for Montreal. He's been arguably their best player in a couple games recently. He had a great stretch of 5 goals in 5 games. He's now up to 6 goals, 5 assists for 11 points in about 33, I think 34 games on the season, or 37, I think maybe. I think he's played in basically every game, but it's not the production we wanted, but he's finally starting to bounce back. But at the same time, it's just the same old story for Montreal, right? If this is truly another brutal injury, if this is another bad knee injury like we saw for Kirby Dach, another lower body injury like we even saw for Newhook, it's like, it's tough. What do you do? And if Josh Anderson goes out, what are the Habs' choices? Well, there's a lot of speculation on who might be called up if Anderson is out long-term. Now, you got to assume he's at least out for a couple games. Dvorak continues to be out. So who should be called up? Well, Anthony Marcotte kind of says, you know, they're going to have to probably call up 2 players, and he suspects it could be Emil Heineman and Brandon Gignac. And I got to say, Brandon Gignac has been playing really, really well for Gignac or Gignac. I'm actually not sure. I haven't heard his name said out loud, but let me know in the comments, of course. But he also said he wouldn't be surprised if it's Sean Farrell. He's had a great week with the Rocket. Now, there's a lot of other players as well as we go through the replies. Danny says, well, if we bring up Joshua Waugh, you know, do you think it could work? And he's like, well, I don't know. Like, you have to watch the matches in Laval. You know, you'll have to see that there's a couple guys actually ahead of Joshua Waugh. We got a different guy saying maybe Elias Anderson and Heineman, but Anderson's maybe still hurt. Xavier Simoneau, maybe. Owen Beck, probably not. But at the same time, it's like there's just a lot of options for Montreal. And I know you guys, a lot of you guys love Joshua Waugh. We love Joshua Waugh here too, but he's cooled off as of late. The last game he had 2 points, and so did Arber Xhekaj. But Emil Heineman seems like the choice to me for sure. I think Heineman has really proven that he is capable of playing with the Habs roster. I mean, his last stint with the Habs before he got sent down, he looked good. He looked like a natural. He looked like he fit out there. As for the other, I really don't know. Like, there's so many different players that could be called up, so I'd love to hear from you guys down below. Who do you think would be called up if Josh Anderson ends up missing an extended period of time? Could we see something like we did Raphael Harvey-Pinard last year, where we get a player coming up from the AHL and really, really proves themselves as a solid player for Montreal? Obviously, it sucks that we have more potentially big injuries coming, but at the same time, I guess you see the young guys play, but it hurts. Sorry, Josh Anderson. You've been playing really well. We support you, but hey, I guess the Habs got to do what they got to do. But we're going to move on to this this Leaf story, and this is a bit interesting. Look, Toronto obviously is desperate for a goalie. They placed Samsonov on waivers, which kind of caught a lot of people by surprise, right? And it was maybe even more by surprise that Samsonov and Eric Comrie from Buffalo both passed through waivers when they were placed there, especially with the need for goaltending around the NHL. Maybe teams didn't value them, or maybe teams were looking to maybe dump salary into trade as well. But naturally, Brad Treliving, the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, has been looking around, trying to figure out how he can remedy his goalie situation. And Elliotte Friedman kind of says that Leafs GM Brad Treliving has offered multiple teams a 6th-round draft pick for a goaltender. This comes from NHLTradeRumors.com, by the way. That all teams declined, but the offers were sent in the hopes that the team would be desperate enough to make a move. And Luke Fox of Sportsnet speculated the goalies on the team among the group Treliving offered a 6th-round pick for include Dan Villard of the Calgary Flames, Jake Allen of the Montreal Canadiens, Anton Forsberg of the Senators, and Eric Comrie of the Buffalo Sabres. Now, there's some interesting context to be pulled from that because, as I said, Eric Comrie went unclaimed on waivers, which might indicate that Brad Treliving was also trying to move some salary along with that. Just speculation, but again, if there's a player you offer a 6th-round pick for and then you don't claim him on waivers, it's like clearly there was some money involved in that deal. So is it just a 6th-round pick that he offered for Jake Allen? I guess we'll never know, but it seems like it was at least that. But at the same time, if you're Montreal, right? Again, we've talked about this before. Right? Maybe you guys are sick of the Jake Allen trade talk, but you guys probably aren't sick of talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and this rivalry with Montreal. When we're talking about Jake Allen, a 6th-round pick to me is an absolute non-starter. You would have to offer something fairly significant for him, in my opinion. Like, it's just strange, right? You waive Ilya Samsonov, a guy who's making less money than Jake Allen this year, and he passes through whatever. You don't play him because he's had an .862 save percentage, something like that this season. He's really not been good. And then you're like, okay, well, we still need a goalie, so how about we try and trade you nothing for Jake Allen? Like, again, I get that Brad Treliving was probably had some other salary moves in mind when he was looking to acquire one of these goalies. And looking at the Leafs roster, it's kind of hard to tell who maybe they'd be putting out there on the trade block. I hope it's not someone like, Ryan Reeves. No, obviously not. But still, like, there has to be something more to this. I don't think it's as bad as some Habs fans have been talking about. Like, I saw a lot of conversation around this stuff, and even with some of my buddies, it's just like, there had to be more to this. And if the Leafs if Brad Treliving came to Montreal, came to Kent Hughes and said, hey, 6th-round pick for Jake Allen, but we'll also give you some salary filler, who do you think it could be from Toronto? Because I'm honestly not that sure. But if we have a quick look at their roster here, we can see that there's some guys that might fit. The first guy that maybe I would notice is Max Domi. Of course, he's got 1 year left at $3 million. Kind of fits with Jake Allen's numbers. I don't think the Leafs would be willing to give him up. They brought him in for a reason, and even though the salary kind of matches, I don't see them moving on from him. David Kampf is actually an interesting one because I believe he was healthy scratched recently. He's been one of their top penalty killers, but I think he's in the doghouse with Sheldon Keefe. Maybe some of you that are following the Leafs a bit more closely can let me know about him. But at the same time, it's like, David Kampf could fit Montreal. I mean, he's a good penalty killer. He's not that old. He's 28 years old at a $2.4 million cap hit. However, if we look over, yeah, he's signed until 2027. So while Jake Allen's the next 2 years, Montreal can maybe retain 50%. You're committing to a guy like David Kampf, who's currently getting scratched in some games for that much money. I don't think it fits. And so then maybe Calle Yarncrook, but again, another thing. He's there for 3 more years, and I think the Leafs want to hold on to him. He's had some moments with the top lines, right? So at the same time, it's really, really hard to tell who Montreal could go after on the Toronto Maple Leafs, who Brad Treliving might have been looking at to give up, at least salary-wise, for Jake Allen. Let me know what you guys think down below. Have a look through the Leafs cap friendly. There's some defensemen too, maybe someone like a Jake McCabe, but again, like, just thinking of these guys, I don't think that the Habs would bite on that. Maybe that's the reason the Habs declined the offer, but regardless, it's really interesting that the Leafs maybe came knocking for the Habs, because yes, there's a bit of a trade history. Of course, the Tomas Plekanec trade that we maybe don't want to talk about, but there have been some other rumblings as well. So yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think this was a low ball from the Leafs, or are you like me, and do you think maybe there was a bit more that meets the eye with these trades, and maybe Kent Hughes has something up his sleeve, or maybe Brad Treliving was trying to fleece the Habs? I don't know. I'd love to hear from you down below. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 10K. It'd be pretty sweet if we hit that in the next few days, and I know you guys can help us out with that. I've been your host, Josh Gosse. I'll catch you in the next one.